Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Got lots of people turning up, which is great. Loads. Wow. Hundreds. We maxed out at 500 and we are jumping up to that quite quickly. So well done for getting in early and getting yourself a slot.
Glad I got in.
Yeah. I thought I was going to get rid of you. Hello, Rob.
Hello. Yeah, lucky I came in when I did because it's filling up fast.
It is. Yeah, I think we're going to reach the capacity, which is super cool. So thanks, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to share the screen shortly. Rob, hi, Spencer. Someone's already found Q&A, Rob, but for those who haven't spotted what's what, do you want to guide them around while I get the screen set up?
Yeah, I will do. Depending on the device you're using, it'll be a little bit different, but probably around about the bottom of your screen, you will see a Q&A box and you'll see a chat box. Whatever you do, do not use the chat box. Well, you can, but we'll just ignore it. If you want to ask a question, the place to do that is in the Q&A box. We'll be taking questions towards the end. Whenever it pops into your head as we go through, just put it in the Q&A, but then we'll save them all up for the end and answer them all then. So we'll kick off in just a sec. It looks like people have nearly finished making their way in. And don't worry, we're not going to keep you here all night. We're going to keep this as close, as tight as we possibly can. We'll make sure you get all your questions answered as well.
Cool. So welcome to this evening's webinar, which is where we're going to invest in 2019. This is a type of question that we get asked so much, like where are you investing right now? Where's best to invest? Different variants of that question. And when we've blogged about it, the amount of hits those blogs get or articles get are far in excess of pretty much everything else. It's a real fascination of the best places to invest. And it's understandable why, because the difference in terms of pound notes capital growth between the best performing and worst performing areas in the UK is huge. You know, you think on one island, it wouldn't really matter where you invested. You know, it's still going to be as much as a muchness, but far from it. If you'd invested in London this year, you would be down, certainly in real terms, in capital growth. But if you'd invested in some other areas in the north that may get mentioned again today, you would be up by a significant amount, you know, close to 10%, which if you've got assets the size that you have in property, that's a big pound notes number. So the stakes are high. So it's easy to understand why people are so keen to understand where the best places are to invest. Now, this is our view. It's not a cast iron guarantee that these are going to be the best places in 2019. But these are the places that we'll be investing, that we'll be directing our attention to, and that we feel that you at least should give serious consideration.
And if we're wrong, we can all be wrong together. So that'll be nice. So what we're going to do is we're going to cover 5 areas that we've got our eye on. And we're going to tell you a little bit about why. You might have other areas that you prefer. You might disagree with what we have to say. But we are at least going to be putting our money where our mouth is. This is where we're going to be personally investing and where we're going to be doing our targeting for our developments as well. Then, like I said earlier, if you were here right at the start, we'll be doing Q&A at the end. You'll find the Q&A box down the bottom. So pop your questions in there. Some people already have, which is great. And we'll get to all of those at the end.
Okay, so should we do the big reveal, Rob, of our... And these are in no particular order, I might add as well. These are our top 5, but we haven't ranked them. So don't see number 1 as number 1. They're all equal in our eyes. Should we reveal the first one?
Let's do it. I don't think it's going to be a major shock, but there's a bit of nuance in here.
Well, we'll see. First is Bognor Regis. No, it's not. It's actually less surprising. It's Manchester, or more to the point, Greater Manchester. Now, Manchester is an area we've talked about a lot on the podcast over the last few years, and rightly so. It's just an incredible city. In fact, the Property Hub is relocating its northern office from Warrington to Manchester as we speak. We got the keys on our office there, and I think that's one of many, many, many examples of businesses moving into Manchester and more investment going in there. Now, we are not causing the price rises by ourselves, moving office there. There are billions and billions of pounds being spent in Manchester. And the city centre is an area we'll still be focused on next year. But if you want to get really smart, look at Greater Manchester as well and the ripple effect from there. Many of you will be based in London, and if you're not, you'll still know what happened because it's such a well-told story. The central areas of London went first after the crash. They were the first places to recover, and then it spiraled out from zone 1 to zone 2, 3, 4, and beyond, and now out to the home counties. The exact same thing is going to happen with Greater Manchester. So while Manchester is still fantastic, still plenty of legs, we are really excited about Greater Manchester. Now, there are so many areas. From Wivamshaw to Stockport to Bolton. There's lots of places to keep your eye on, all around Greater Manchester. We are actively looking for development opportunities in the Greater Manchester region. We're big fans. We think it's got plenty of upside. So if you're already there, congratulations. We expect good things over the coming years. And if you're already in Manchester, congratulations, because you've already seen that growth. But Manchester, it's easy to put on this list, Rob, because it's kind of a safe bet. It's already moving and with some way to go.
Yeah, but well worth including because we think it's going to do so well. Obvious to us, probably obvious to most listeners of the podcast, but not obvious to everyone, which is why not everyone's in there yet. But the transformation in the city centre over the last couple of years really is quite something. And so the ripple effect, we've seen it in London, but Manchester is comparable to London in so many ways now. It is truly the London of the North. It is radically different from how it was a few years ago if you haven't been there recently. So that ripple effect looks pretty, well, we don't give guarantees, but if you're going to make a prediction, it's a pretty safe prediction to make.
It certainly is. So remember, you've got the questions box on your screen, normally at the bottom of the screen. So type in any questions you've got around our first prediction. But Manchester, a huge success story already and one that we expect to continue. So next up on our list, Rob, is Leeds.
It is. Leeds is a city that hasn't kicked on as quickly as some other places, most notably Manchester. It had a tough time of it in 2008. Its prices fell a long way, and I think that scared some people off Leeds, but I think it scared them off for too long. Because Leeds is a very strong city. It's got a well-balanced economy. It's got a lot going on in terms of financial services, but there's lots of other things happening there as well. And the investment is going in. It's just that nobody's really noticed yet. There is £7 billion worth of investment in the pipeline. And I know lots of big numbers are thrown around in property, and it's quite easy to lose track of what's a big number when it comes to regeneration and what isn't. 20 million is not a lot. 7 billion is a lot of investment, and that is going to make a huge difference. There's lots of businesses going in. There's loads of office space being constructed. But when it comes to residential development, the only people building right now are pension companies. Nobody else, private investors, aren't really aware of it yet. Part of that is because of memories of what happened in 2008 and a bit of a myth. For a long time, because prices fell around about the time of the last crash, because there was some oversupply, there was a persistent myth that there was too much stock in Leeds. As a result of that, nobody's really built anything at all. What does that mean? Well, because the population is growing, it means that now there's not enough stock. And like I said, the pension companies have started to notice this. But Rob, when it comes to everyone else, I think we're probably good. I think there'll be some people be surprised to see Leeds on this list because it's not really talked about all that much.
It's not, but this is where you can take advantage of the network or the conversations that we have. Most people don't know that pension companies are building or developers are building specifically for pension companies and they're buying the blocks. Most people don't know that. Now, pension companies, you can normally define as smart money. And the yields are good for city centre, financially strong, as Rob said, but not even normal developers are in there yet. That's how early we are. Now, there's a risk of us going too early here, but we think 2019 is the year that at least people start to take notice of Leeds. We've touched on it before, and we're not saying that it's going to get the coverage that Manchester has received, but people are going to start to take notice of Leeds. And there may be some developers re-enter the city centre. It's a strong city already, Leeds. It's not one of these cities that needs the 7 billion worth of investment, which, as Rob said, is a huge number. But my word, what a difference that's going to make. It's already strong, and with that sort of money and investment going in, it's only going to get stronger. It's the biggest financial centre outside of London in the UK. So much going for it already, and so much more to come. Leeds is definitely one to put on your radar, and if we can do deals there, we certainly will.
Right, I can see we've had absolutely loads of questions, which is brilliant. We will get to them all later, but we're just going to finish going through the list. As we said, this is in no particular order, but number 3 on our list, well, it had to be really, didn't it?
Oh, how did that get in? Well, no, it's not just because I am from Liverpool and it's incredible and it's obviously the best city in the UK. Obviously, all that is true in my eyes, but Liverpool is there for good reason. If you think about it, Leeds and Liverpool flank Manchester, and they are cities that will benefit from what's happened in Manchester as well. Didn't really touch on that with Leeds, but it's important to point out that both being so close to Manchester will have an effect all by itself. However, they will see uplifts in their own right. Liverpool is still really good value. In terms of prices against 08, they are in many areas haven't recovered past the 08 prices. So they've fallen and are just coming back to where we were 10 years ago. So there's loads of upside available. The yields are very good. Out 3 cities we've mentioned so far, probably the strongest yields on average. Of course, it will depend on where you're investing and what you're investing in. But as an average, they are a little bit stronger than Leeds and Manchester. Liverpool has had lots of regen over the last 10 years, and there's plenty more planned. Liverpool Waters is a massive project, an absolutely huge project. And behind that project are some serious players, the Peel Group. Now, they've not just formed and not done anything before. They've got an incredible track record, including the Trafford Centre in Manchester, Salford Quays in Manchester, areas that are completely changed by their efforts. The Peel Group are behind Liverpool Waters and Wirral Waters, the Wirral just over on the other side of the Mersey. But it's been a lot of talk, and I'm sure the intent's been good, but finally we're starting to see movement. There is regen happening. It's looking like it's really going to start get going now. Stuff has already happened. There's a new port in there. There's a new cruise terminal, but there's so much more to come. So Liverpool is rightly in our top 5. It's a lot of good things happening. It's already strong. There are areas you'll want to avoid, but there are areas you will definitely want to consider when you invest in 2019.
Yeah, it's a city that is popular with podcast listeners, maybe because Rob B's dulcet tones are slipping a subliminal message in there. I don't know. But it's on a lot of people's radars. But I think there are still some people who've been nervous about it. They've looked at Manchester and seen how far that's been kicking on and wondering if Liverpool can do the same. But it absolutely can. And I've been there a fair bit myself over the last year or two. And there are some really special things happening there for sure.
So next on our list is, close to Manchester again, Sheffield.
Yeah, Sheffield is a really interesting one because, again, it's a contender for ripple effect from some of the other northern cities that are a little bit earlier in the cycle. Sheffield is further behind in the cycle. Much like Leeds, there's a risk of being too early. But actually, Sheffield is a surprisingly strong investment location. If you look at the prices in the city centre especially, you'll probably be shocked at how low they are. You would not expect the centre of a popular city, lots of industry there, popular with students. It's a really solid location. You look at the prices and they really are shockingly low. And it is early, but there's a lot of development going on. The city centre, once upon a time, was not that great. I'll be polite about it.
It was grim, Rob. I lived there for a
while. Okay, you don't have to be polite. That's fine. It was grim. And it has had a lot of development already. The area by the station is really nice now. There's been a fair bit going on. But there's a lot more to come. As just one example, the Moore Shopping Centre is having £480 million spent on it at the moment. Now, I know we've chucked around billions before, so you might be a bit blasé about 480 million now, but that is just one of the projects that's going on in the city centre, which isn't a particularly big city centre. So that money is going to make a really big difference. There's also 2 luxury hotels being built in the town centre at the moment, which is always a positive indication because these hoteliers do their research, and HSBC are opening new offices there as well. So if you get in at today's prices, it's one of those things where it's hard to see how things could fail to go in one particular direction because there's so much happening there, but also you're getting in at such a low base.
You are. Of the 5 we've picked, this is definitely the furthest behind in the cycle. So of the growth next year, this may not see the highest out of the 5. This may not be as high as the other 4. However, we just got to start talking about it because, as Rob said, I think it was a great description. The prices are almost shockingly low because some of the other cities that we mentioned already have started to move, not dramatically, but have, seen capital growth over the last few years, and Sheffield hasn't. That gap has been extended further, and you're like, wow, go and have a look. It is a bit of a wow when you're looking at really good stuff in the city centre for the prices you're paying, and therefore because of that, the yields are attractive as well.
Okay, so our final city on our list for 2019 is Nottingham. Nottingham must have the worst marketing department in the world. I don't know more people don't talk about Nottingham. We get a lot of emails and we get lots of people saying, what do you think about this place? What do you think about that place? Nottingham barely ever comes up. But you look at where it is geographically. You look at how close it is to London. You look at the employers there. You look at the universities there. You look at the city centre, which is really, really nice. And then you look at the prices, and it just doesn't make any sense. I don't understand why prices in Nottingham aren't higher. It's absolutely underpriced, given where it is, given its connectivity, and given what's going on there. That's before HS2 even kicks in. Once HS2 gets there, and yeah, it will take a while, but it's going to happen, it's going to bring London within an hour, and you'll be able to get to Birmingham within 20 minutes, which is just mad, really. And with parallels to Leeds, there's not been a lot of new build in the centre in the last 10 years. There wasn't loads, actually, before that. In the last boom, a few blocks went up. There's a few big blocks, but not a vast amount. What there were really, really nice conversions. What they've done well in the city centre is they've converted lots of the old industrial buildings really nicely into small developments, small blocks of flats. And they look great. But because they're mostly conversions, there weren't large numbers of them. And since then, it hasn't really picked up. I don't know why, but it has to change. It just has to. Rob, you talk about fundamentals, but this is fundamental city. It's got everything going for it. It's just a mystery to me why it's not on more people's radar.
Yeah, because some people will talk to us about Leeds, and it is on people's radar. I mean, it's, nowhere near as much as, say, Manchester or Liverpool Leeds, but even less so. Probably at the bottom of the 5 where people are asking us questions, like you touched on, Rob, is Nottingham. And I was late to the party on Nottingham. It's only the last 12 months I've got my head around it. And it's almost embarrassing that it's taken me that long to see it. But I think, to be fair, it may have been a little bit too early, but now is the time. It's like Leeds. It's affluent already. It's got the fundamentals already. More money coming in, absolutely. But it's in a great place already. And the pricing, well, it's underpriced, as Rob said. Developers are starting to wake up to this now. And there are a number of planning applications going into Nottingham for bigger developments, but they barely got started. Most of them aren't out the ground yet, never mind. I don't even think they're at the stage of putting hoardings around their sites. So I know stuff is in the pipeline. I know stuff's on the horizon. But this is the chance. I feel a little bit out of the 5. Leeds and Nottingham are a bit like Manchester a few years ago where we tipped it and it's done great since. And I feel very confident about Nottingham and Leeds because I don't actually think we're being that brave because it's already in a great position. I actually think that people are just being silly, overlooking it. It's not us being, super clever. It speaks for itself. The story is there, the pricing is right, and the fundamentals are there. As Rob called it, Nottingham's fundamental city. But I think Nottingham and Leeds, if you pair the two this year as a focus point, they're pretty safe bets. Again, if you want to look at something a bit more adventurous, you've got Sheffield and you've got Manchester and Liverpool for those sure things that are already doing. So depending on who you are as an investor, you might want to have a look at them all. But you've got the two cities that are already doing it, Liverpool and Manchester, with plenty to go. You've got the two under the radar that really should be doing it and will probably follow Liverpool and Manchester in Nottingham and Leeds. And then you've got our wild card, probably of the five, which is Sheffield, just because it's so cheap.
So coming up, we are going to tell you how to turn this into action and take this new information and do something with it. And we're going to answer your questions as well. But first, I think it's really important, Rob, to throw in this caveat, because we've said it on the podcast multiple times. We say it every time we answer a question about it, but it needs to keep being said, because just because someone says, oh, Nottingham is a great place to invest, that does not mean that every place in Nottingham is a good place to invest. It doesn't mean you can buy the cheapest property in the worst location and still be okay. The location within those cities is critical, and paying the right price for the property is also critical. A good location, a good city really, really, really helps. The difference between investing in the city that grows fastest and the ones that does poorest is enormous. That's a great base, but that is far from all it takes to make a good investment.
Absolutely. It's easy for me to talk about Liverpool because I'm from there. So hopefully I won't offend people when I say this, but there are parts of Liverpool which are fantastic, like beautiful places that most people would be happy living in. And then there are places that you would be scared to walk through in the day, never mind at night. Now, it's because of that, they are both, even though they are both, called Liverpool, because of those reasons, because they are so different, the difference in your investment would be huge. It's going to be right at the end of the cycle for any growth, and they will. Every dog has its day. But then the better areas, and that's where you should really focus, are going to do particularly well. And I think if you're unsure, just go to the best areas, because no matter what happens in the cycle, they're going to remain the best areas. Particularly if you've invested in London or you're used to London pricing, to go into the best areas, it's not money that's going to make you wince, particularly if you're looking at like Sheffield or Liverpool, even the price wise. You don't have to, go on the outskirts and go really cheap. Just go in the center. Go for the best places, because they'll remain the best places.
Definitely. So the next step is to build on your area knowledge. So if you're choosing between these locations, or you want to familiarize yourself with what's going on in a particular city, start your research now. The more you know, the more confident you'll be making those investments. We're doing this now in November to give you a head start, so you can be in ahead of everyone else. Look out for new announcements. There's some sites we put on there for specific cities, but there's plenty of others. Just have a bit of a search, find the best information sources for the place you're interested in, sign up for their emails if you can, and just monitor them. And don't worry about jotting all this down. We're going to send you an email after this webinar later this evening that's going to have these links in there. You can take it a step further as well, because desktop research is great, but consider visiting your target area as well. If you're investing away from where you live, it can be a bit of a leap of faith, and it can take confidence. The best way to build that confidence is to actually visit. If you can, visit at a few different times and see what it's like and check out all the different areas. You'll find that a lot of it will match up with the research you've done, and there'll be few surprises, but that in itself will give you confidence that you can accurately size up an investment. And then finally, keep an eye on the HomeTrack report as well. We look at HomeTrack all the time when it comes out. It's a really valuable information source. You'll see that some of the locations we talked about will kick on really quickly. Others are will be mid-table and they'll edge their way up. But it's always worth keeping an eye on HomeTrack, because it's just fascinating, the data they pull together.
Yeah, it's really good. Sign up to their emails, because they'll put it into your inbox every month, so you don't even have to think about it. So one to do on your to-do list off the back of this evening. Okay, so what's the most important thing is you're taking action. So you've got this knowledge, you've got this information. As Rob said, start doing your research, start digging deep. But you want to, if you're doing this yourself, and you absolutely can, start building your local network in those areas. We're telling you now so you can do the work. We want you to get ahead. Set up your Rightmove alerts. So start looking for the best areas, get the Rightmove alerts up, start to get a flavour of the pricing, set the alerts and the keener end of the pricing levels, so you see the best stuff come through, and start getting on the train or in the car and go and seeing these places and book viewings and get on the ground and meet the local letting agents and go to the meetups in these areas, so you are ahead of the game. There's a bit of work, but if you put all that work in, you can get yourself ahead and make sure you're seeing the best investments in those areas. Now, if you haven't got the time or you don't want to do all that as well, you can work with a sourcing company. There are others out there, but obviously we run RMP Property. If you want to speak to RMP Property, because we dictate where they source, and they are going to be sourcing in these areas, so they're not going to, you wouldn't contact them and they're suddenly mad keen on Scunthorpe. I'm sure Scunthorpe's nice, but not for investing in 2019. Go to rmpproperty.com/yes, and you can look at meeting one of the portfolio managers at RMP Property. They're investors themselves. But whatever you do, build on your own knowledge, so you can verify what they tell you. I know that sounds like a weird thing to say because it's run by ourselves, but you want to always research their research or research our research and research the stuff that we put in there this evening. So the most important thing to remember is you can do all this by yourself, but if you don't want to, or you physically haven't got the time, we can help you with that as well. So, Rob, questions?
Yes.
I can see there's a lot.
Yeah, I'm regretting saying earlier we'll answer all your questions because there's 90 of them. So we might not answer all your questions, but they are bloomin' good questions. All the ones I've seen are fantastic. So if we don't get around to answering your specific question, I strongly encourage you to send it in for Ask Rob and Rob, because we'd love to answer it on there. But I reckon, Rob, in the next 10 minutes, we go through as many as we can and rattle through with some quick fire answers. How does that sound to you?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, a couple of people have said, surprised Birmingham didn't make the list. Yeah, could have done, couldn't it?
Yeah, could have. Yeah, there's loads of places. Birmingham is great. It's hard. We wanted to pick a top 5. A top 10 probably would have made it, but we picked Nottingham in the Midlands, and we think Birmingham is great. I just think it's harder to get a great deal in Birmingham. That's why it probably didn't make the top of the list. It's hard to get the affordability levels for the mortgage stress tests now in the city centre, and the city centre is where you want to be. If you can find something that works in the city centre that matches all the stress tests and it's a strong deal, then crack on. Absolutely. But yes, Birmingham's great. We just had to pick 5 and we've done that.
Yep. A few people are asking about locations within Nottingham and whether the outskirts is too risky. Yeah, at this stage in the cycle, I'd be sticking to the city centre of Nottingham, keeping it central. The prices are still very reasonable there. No need to take too much of a chance. There will be a time when the outskirts are good, but at this point in the cycle, just like Leeds, I'd be keeping it pretty central. A couple of people as well, Rob, asking about Crewe. Do we still rate Crewe?
No, you've made a mistake. No, only joking. Crewe's great. It's not, Crewe benefits from HS2. Absolutely top-notch area. Again, would probably make our top 10. So absolutely nothing wrong with Crewe. We have our 5. It took us a while to pick them, but that's the ones we're nailing. That. I'll call us 2. We'll see. We could be wrong, but I'd still put Crewe in the top 10.
Kishan is asking about Leicester. Leicester could have been in there as well.
Yeah, that's 8 out of 10. So yeah, Leicester could have been. We looked at Leicester, but we went with Nottingham. But Leicester's great. Leicester would definitely be in the mix for the top 10 without doubt. Leicester is great. So as I said, it's not that these other areas aren't strong. It's just that the rationale for picking the 5 that we have is so compelling that we just went for it. Probably the wild card, as we said, was Sheffield, and we might be a little bit too early there, but the prices are so low, we just wanted to draw your attention to it.
Yep. We are getting a lot of questions about locations within Liverpool. A couple of people are asking if it's too saturated for HMOs, which is just a personal opinion, but I think it is in the kind of the typical HMO areas. But outside of that, Rob, have you got a couple of areas you tip and a couple to avoid maybe?
I think what you've said, Rob, on city centres stands true for all 5 areas. And at Greater Manchester, we've said that. So we deliberately said, look at the city and beyond. But the other 4, I would say, stick with the city centres. Now, there are other areas in Liverpool, like the best areas, which are like Allerton, Sefton Park area. They're all very nice as well, kind of more south of the city. So they are areas to watch. But we had Tom Bloxham on the podcast not so long ago, and I thought he made a fantastic point. And it really shifted the way I view city centres. I was always big on them, but he pointed out that the most expensive part of London is the centre. And that's the case for most major cities around the world. But in the rest of the UK, it doesn't stand true. And I think in our major cities in the UK, I don't know how long it's going to take, but that will change at some point. And the central areas, because the amenities, the facilities are improving in the city centres in the north now, that they will become the most expensive areas. They're always going to remain the bang in the middle, where the epicenter of everything that's going on in these areas. So the safest money for me is in the city centre for all these locations. The only one we've said to consider a little further afield is Manchester, and look at some of the other options that Greater Manchester gives you.
Tristan asks a really good question, which is, where do you think each of these are in the 18-year property cycle? My answer to that would be broadly, because all the fundamental economics are the same. The whole UK is similar in where it is in the cycle, which is sort of around about the mid-cycle wobble. But there are some variations. So Manchester is probably the most advanced. Then you've got Liverpool just behind that. Leeds probably just behind that, then maybe Sheffield and Nottingham somewhere around the same. But they are just that's kind of details in where they are. It's not so much where they are in the cycle, but more where they are in mainstream awareness, I suppose. So broadly, they're all the same, but there are some differences. So some of them are earlier picks than others. We've got so many, and they just keep on scrolling. Bolton's got a mention. Bolton, we mentioned, is somewhere that would be counted in Greater Manchester as a strong one. Somebody's asked about Cardiff, and they say they reckon that'll do well. From what I know about Cardiff, which isn't a lot, I would agree with that. A few people asking about locations in the south, which is a fair question, because people who live in the south don't necessarily want to invest up north if they can do closer to home. But it is hard, Rob, to find places that work in the south. Is there anywhere that you would say could work? Not as well, but could work at all?
Could work, but I wouldn't do it. We had a roundtable with some, the leading experts in property, like the leading experts, and all of us were in agreement that London is just a no-go zone at the moment. Now, there are a bit more areas in the south and the southeast of London, but that's really the heart of it, isn't it? That's where the property market comes from. London is the heartbeat for the south and the property markets around it. So yeah, you can look to other areas like Luton and beyond, but Luton's already done well. I think it's, if we're talking about awareness, it's much further ahead than Manchester. So less to go. So no, I'm going to stick to my guns. We will at one point, when we do one of these, talk about London and the southeast again, but not for a few years. It's about working hard now to get your head around investing in other areas. You don't have to go as far as Leeds and Manchester. We give you Nottingham. That's not that far away. Nottingham's not that far away from London. So if you don't want to quite get up to the far north near the wall, then maybe check out Nottingham. But you've got to get out of London and the southeast if you want capital growth and yield. It doesn't give you anything at the moment. I just don't understand why you do it.
Okay. Rob, I'm just going to get you to answer another question while I scroll through and try to find even more of these. In the meantime, I think Alex is trolling us now. He's saying, what about the Orkney Islands? No, that didn't quite make the list. Thanks, Alex. Rob, got a question about RMP and strategy meetings, where are the strategy meetings held is the question.
If you are in the UK, they are in London. If you're overseas, they can be done via a video meeting. To book a free meeting, just follow that link that's on the screen, rmpproperty.com/yes. They'll have a chat with you first, make sure it's right so you don't waste your time. And the meeting is absolutely free and there is no selling. It's all about building a strategy.
Okay. Just had a question about Doncaster. Doncaster is not making the list in the same way, but have seen some really good deals there. And I think that's one where it's very, very early. It's a lot earlier than the locations we've been talking about, and location is extremely important there. But could be, if you're prepared to get in early and wait, that could be a good one to have an eye on. We've also had, Rob, a few separate people asking a very similar question, which is, does any of this change if HS2 ends up not happening?
I think it's a really good question. Does it change? No. And the reason why is a lot of this regen, particularly in Leeds and Manchester, is not connected to HS2. It's already happened. It's not subject to. It's going ahead. Manchester in particular, the airport is the third biggest in the country. You've got Luton, you've got Gatwick, and you've got Manchester. It's big international airport, and it brings in influence and money with that. A lot of the money in the city centre, again, is not HS2 linked. For me, if you said which could you have, HS2 or HS3, which is the fast trains across the north rather than from north to south, if you had to choose what you'd have, I'd take the latter. I'd rather see faster trains across the north rather than London to the north, because you can already get to Manchester in 2 hours. You can already get to Leeds and Liverpool in 2 hours. It's not bad. It's not terrible. There's 3 trains an hour every hour to Manchester. The connectivity is reasonable. It's actually the time it takes to get across the north, which is pitiful. So HS2 is a welcome boost, absolutely, but it's not the be-all and end-all.
Okay, so looking at the questions, still absolutely loads of them, but the majority are asking for comments on specific areas, which we either don't know enough about or don't want to get into some but not be able to cover others. So I think we will have to leave it there for the Q&A. But again, if we haven't answered your question, I'm really sorry, but do send it in for Ask Rob and Rob, because these are really great questions and we'd love to answer more of them. Just don't want to keep you here all evening. Don't want your dinner going cold.
No, we do not. No, don't you getting hangry. So, thank you. Hope you found this useful. We've enjoyed putting our thoughts together and, really thinking this through. It's not something we've done in a few minutes. It's something we've put a lot of time and thought into. And, the prediction shows, if you heard the last few years, have been there or thereabouts. So these are no guarantees that we said at the start that these are the best areas to invest, but they are, I would say, worth your serious consideration, because we've given this list some serious consideration. And I think the story's pretty compelling for the top 5 that we've picked. So start doing your research, and please, in a year's time, if you've had success, let us know. And, if you want to buy us a pint too, that's okay.
Absolutely. So we are going to follow this up with an email that you'll receive later this evening. It's going to have a recap of the areas we've talked about, and it's going to have all the links that we referenced, mainly on the previous slide as well. So if you've failed to jot anything, don't worry, that's going to be hitting your inbox later on this evening.
Here, Will. But thank you so much for joining us on this Monday evening. Hope you've learned a bit. Hope you've taken some notes, and I hope you take action most of all. That's the most important thing to do. It's great coming on these things and learning, and there's no courses to buy or anything silly here. But what we do want you to do instead is take action. And then once you have, let us know how you get on, whether it's through an iTunes review, contacting us on social media, leaving a message in the forums, however you do it, or dropping us an email, however you do it. We take the most pride when we hear that people are taking action off our advice and knowledge that we share. So please do it. Best of luck with your endeavours in 2019, and look forward to dropping a few Ask Rob or Rob podcasts based on the questions that didn't get answered. Thanks, everyone.
Absolutely. Enjoy your evening. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.